who made the decision. It's just someone sent around emails and says, okay, that's what we do now. So good. So please mark that in your calendars that there will be a 3-week period where we're not going to meet in person, and the experience from the Corona time tells me that we can make it work. Probably not ideal for discussions, but it will work out. And then maybe one final thing. So we're going to finish in January 25, and I think that because we're a master class, we will be free to choose the exam date ourselves, right? Not quite sure how early you want to know this. Maybe for those of you who are planning to travel somewhere in the break, then kind of need to find a procedure, maybe vote or so, what's kind of your most popular date. One thing that we could do is just do it in the last week of the semester. We have a room here, right? Probably it's a little bit tight room for having an exam in here, but yeah, so that would be one option, to just do it in the last week of the semester. I will try to make sure that you don't have multiple exams on one day, so I will contact my colleagues, but that will be fine. But we can choose it basically freely. There's no examinations office setting the dates for us. That's done only for us in the bachelor series, and in the master we're free to pick that. I'm going to tell a little bit more about the exam in a second. So first of all, what are the materials that you get from me? So first of all, you get a set of lecture slides. So from my perspective as a consultant, these slides aren't too good because they're very text heavy. But why do I do that? I do it because I know that you're studying from them for your exams. So I put in more definitions and more text than I probably should. However, on the other side, they are not 100% complete, right? So I rarely put in examples. So if you want to kind of take note of them, you have to do that yourself. So for me, it's really important that you take your own notes. There will be some little gaps in between, and I'll show you a quick example here in our introductory chapter. You might find pages that look like this. So the question is, why do I do that? And it's not to annoy you or make it harder for you or kind of penalize you if you're not attending. The reason is basically that it could be 3 things. The first thing is that we may have a discussion here together in class, and I think it would be weird if I put the summary of the discussion already on the slide. Right? You have the slides in front of you, and then you just need to read it up, and that would be weird. The second thing is that we might do little calculations and problem sets in between. Again, if the solution is already on the slide, that would be weird. So I will give you like 10, 15 minutes. You can collaborate with your neighbors here in the room, and you can try it out yourself. So my typical approach is that we kind of do a little example first and then formalize it using formulas. So you understand the concepts basically from trying to solve it yourself first. Right? So you will find lots of little examples in the slides. Don't worry, I will upload everything that I write down here. Right? So it might just take 1 or 2 days, but my annotations will be shared on Moodle. And then the final thing will be, since we're a master course, we're going to do a few derivations for formulas that I think are key or are important. Again, as I mentioned before, you don't learn something by just staring at formulas. So sometimes it makes sense to just write the formula down yourself and do maybe 2 or 3 steps in the computation. You have a totally different focus on detail if you do that. So if you write down a little subscript, you immediately ask yourself, okay, what does that subscript mean? If you just stare at a formula, you might just overread it, just ignore it. So there will be some things that we're going to do together here. And on top of that, there's kind of research that shows that you can significantly reduce the number of repetitions to memorize something if you write it down. So I hope that is then also helpful for your learning. On top of that, we'll have some problem sets where you will get solutions from me. The problem sets are intended to be kind of the workload for you at home. By default, I would not discuss them in class. However, you can demand kind of, if there is like a difficult problem or you just don't understand how I've solved something in the solutions, you can demand or ask for it, and I will carve out 30 minutes or so in a session and we just do it together, right? But that will be on demand, so please let me know whenever you think that we should do something together here. Just as a side note, it would make sense then to work on the problem sets a little bit earlier, not just like in the week before the exam, because then we still have sufficient time. If you realize, okay, I don't understand what the hell is asked here from me, we have plenty of time then to discuss it and kind of solve it here together. If it's all crammed in the last week, then we might just run out of time. And then there will be some additional materials, some spreadsheets with data, and we're going to kind of implement a couple of things in Excel. And most importantly, I think the formula sheet. So that will be something that is also part of the exam. So the exam has a title page, and the second page will be the formula sheet that I will going to share in advance. The reason is very simply that you don't have to memorize formulas. I'm not a big fan of that. There will be another kind of tool or helper for the exam that I'll come to in a moment. But maybe before, let's go over the list of readings. So since we're basically covering lots of ground here, there's a big choice of books. And I'm not quite sure if you really need a book for this class, because I hope that I have put basically everything that you need to know on the slides. And it really depends a little bit on what the focus is and what you're interested in. So there are basically general textbooks, like the first one, for example, Investments, and the book Corporate Finance by Burke and DiMaso. So these are kind of the standard textbooks that are used for finance courses in MBA programs in the US. The corporate finance textbook will be very useful because also Ursula Walter is going to use that in the next semester's class if you want to attend her course. So most of the basics are covered in both books. Of course, the investment books doesn't cover the corporate finance part of next semester's class. These are very thick books and unfortunately very expensive. The Burke DiMaso book is in our library. We have lots of them. So if you think that you need a book, you may just have a look at this in the library. And I think there's some in presence that you can't take away, but there's also some that you can take home. Furthermore, for the corporate finance book by Burke and DiMaso, we have an online access, unfortunately only for the German version. So how this works is you have to be connected to the VPN or the university network. You go to the website of the library, and then you can directly open a viewer or reader that opens the book. Unfortunately, it's not really convenient, like a PDF, so you can't scroll through it, so you have to go through it page by page. It's really slow. You can't print it. So it might give you kind of the first impression if you're thinking about maybe buying a book, or you can have a look at it, or if you just want to read up something very specifically and look for something and you don't want to run to the library, then you can do that. As far as I'm aware, this is only possible for the German version, but I'll have to check. So then there are two alternatives, and I'm a big fan actually of the two alternative books. So there's the book Financial Markets and Corporate Strategy by Grimblatt and Titman. So this is a very advanced book. It's very close to research. It has, again, everything in there that you need for this class. The thing that's not so good here is that it's, I think, a one-off book. I think it was written in 2006 and has never been updated since then. So it's a little bit outdated. But in terms of how it is connected to research and empirical evidence, this is by far the best book. And lots of derivations in there. So for those of you who may be interested in maybe pursuing a PhD, a doctorate after your studies, that would be the book to go. Right, so I want to put at least one advanced book in here. I'm a big fan of this book, but the downside is that it's not been updated for the last 15 years or so. And then there's another book by Ivo Welch, and you see a link there. Actually, know this researcher, he's actually German, but teaches at the University of California. I met him in Frankfurt. He's a really fun guy to be around. Well, it depends on, like, he's someone who likes to insult a lot of people. He's very straightforward, so as long as he's talking about someone else, it's very fun and entertaining. He's the editor of a journal called the Critical Finance Review. Right? So he has a very critical approach. So what he's doing, for example, he's replicating research studies that have been done 20 years ago and wants to check whether the results are still holding. Right? So replication is one thing that is probably not done enough in research. And there's this is a whole new discussion. We could fill lectures with this. That actually many of the things that we believe are true from research are actually false, because you just basically found them randomly, just by accident in a certain data set. This is called p-hacking. So you just kind of take 20 different samples, just by chance, one of the 20 samples will show you significant results just randomly, right, at a 5% level. Right? So that's what probability tells us, right? And the point is that kind of many of the studies only get published if they show significant results, right? So you have a researcher trying out 20 different things and just randomly getting to one significant result, and that will be published. It's a big problem in research, and so this is something that you can address with replication studies, right? You take a different sample, you do it again, and if it still holds the result, you can be sure that that is actually true. Then you can easily see if something does not hold in a new data set or in a different country, for example. So this is something that he's known for, to be very critical. And this is mirrored in the approach in his book, right? So the other three books are kind of a little bit more objectively describing theories, for example. Okay, there's a list of assumptions, that's the steps that you do, and this is the result, period, right? And well, the Grimlett-Tippmann book shows you some data, but I think it's still very objective, and Eagle has very strong opinions, so he's kind of very biased in his views. So, for example, one theory that we're going to discuss, the capital asset pricing model, is totally shredded to pieces in his book, right? And he will be telling you very directly that this is a bad theory and doesn't hold in real life. Right? So if you want to read up a little bit more critical view of finance, specifically after many financial crises that happened, this will be the book. And the good thing is that this is available for free. Right? So he's put it on his website. There are, I think, two versions, a Master of Financial Engineering version, the MFE version, and the normal version. They're only different, I think, with regard to the problem sets. So the content of the main text is the same. It doesn't matter which one you use. You can download, so first of all, I think you have to enter, there's a window popping up asking you to enter an email address. If you don't want to do that, just don't put in anything, just click OK, it will work. Right? So you don't have to kind of provide your data. And then you can download every chapter as a PDF. There's a watermark in there, so it's probably not good for printing, but you can read it very conveniently, I think, on a tablet or a laptop. If you're interested in a kind of printed version, you can order printed copies, and this book has by far the lowest price of all the books on the list. I think it might be $50 or so. Right. Textbooks in the US are usually very expensive, in the 3-digit area.